And I'm Toby Eunice. Stick with us a couple of seconds, and we'll talk about the epilogue in Forrest Fenn's first memoir, The Thrill of the Chase. You want me to fix that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody wants to look at that wire.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna. If you want me to fix it, it's gonna have to go out this way.
It needs to be pointed at me more.
All right. Here, I'm gonna actually fix that. You.
Me what?
Do your thing.
Oh. So, there. Hello and welcome to A Gypsy Kiss, the book club. Please take a moment and like this video. Hit your thumbs up and share it with your social media contacts. Let them know we are live and check us out. Join the chat. Please take a moment to subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications whenever we go live or release a new video.
Housekeeping, you want towel?
And now for housekeeping, we want to send out a thank you to our moderators, Jimmy Fast, Joel Lewicki, Jason Eunice, and Eric Schmidt. These gentlemen keep our chat safe and the conversation flowing. They also provide additional information and links, so we appreciate them for being here. Our presentation today will be followed by Q&A and open text lines.
I couldn't think of another way to say that.
That's what it says, open text.
Open text lines.
No calls.
No calls.
No calls? Okay. Today, the Forrest Fenn Book Club Thrill of the Chase, we're covering the epilogue, the very last piece of the book. So,
Can I talk about today's wine first?
talk about days one, and I'll share us on Facebook. How about that?
Okay, that's good. I'm going to turn my audio down just a tad because it's loud in my headphones. Okay, so our wine today is a St. Clair Malvasia Bianca. The St. Clair Winery is a local vineyard and winery and a bistro. This is a 2016 wine. It's a very light wine, a little bit sweet. And if you ever find yourself in Albuquerque and you're driving, let's see, it would be westbound on I-40 from I-25. If you turn off at Rio Grande Boulevard and go south about a block, maybe less, you'll see the St. Clair Bistro. I highly recommend it. It's one of our favorite restaurants, and they have a really great chef there, and he changes his menu every season to go along with the season. And so I highly recommend it. And they do have great wines. A lot of, well, not a lot of them. There are many of them that are sweeter than my particular taste. But every once in a while you get a light sweet one like this Malvasia Bianca. And it makes it worthwhile. Yeah. What are we drinking today?
Well, so many good things.
Mm-hmm. We've had some good things.
Could we do them all?
So you go ahead.
I was like, so my birthday,
Mm-hmm.
our 1 year anniversary of live streaming, we hit 3,500.
3,500 subscribers. And your daughter is getting married.
My
New
daughter's
podcast.
getting married next week. What else?
I don't know. It covers a lot of territory.
We're
still alive.
We have a lot of stuff to be
We're still in
thankful
this search.
for, and we're very glad to be here, and we're glad that
And
you're
there's
here as well.
And there's a new Forrest Fenn film apparently coming out sometime soon.
Or series, we're not sure what.
Series.
And a book.
Yeah.
So all kinds of fun stuff.
Dang.
Yay.
Good day for everybody.
So cheers. Oops, hang on there. There we go. Ting. All right.
Oh, that's sweeter than I expected. That's practically a
I think all
Moscato.
the St. Clair wines
Are they?
are sweet.
Yeah.
All sweet, yes.
That's practically a Moscato.
Yes.
I mean it's fruity, but it's very sweet.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a local winery, and it's just up the street. They have their tasting room just up the street, and with an attached restaurant.
And bistro.
Yeah.
So we'll keep an eye on the chat room, but if you have questions about today's program, make sure that you take time to send us a text at 1-800-947-1043, and it pops up on my cell phone here, and I'll make sure that we get to your question today. So thanks for joining us today.
Is this today's chat or last night's chat?
No, that's today.
It looks like they're saying the same things they were saying last night.
Well, they're having, that's good, actually. Did you update this? Yeah, you did. Okay. All right, you ready to rock and roll here?
Let's get started.
So this is The Thrill of the Chase by Forrest Fenn, the epilogue, pages 144 to 147. Technically, I'm not supposed to call it a chapter, but it is the 26th chapter in the book. Page 145. I'm going to see if I can get my glasses to cooperate here. Now, as I look back with a vision of 79 years to lean against, I wonder what I've learned, and several things come to mind. I've learned that having enough money is much better than having a lot of money, because casual cash propagates idle fingers. And I've learned that anguish wrought by misdeeds made in later life comes in larger doses than with misdeeds made in adolescence. Only an experience can teach thoroughly, and with the speed that is not always available in the classroom. Embarrassing incidents educate the best and the fastest, and can come along with a lasting sting. And what I've learned that's most important is that both countries and people should know enough to just leave other folks alone and do a better job of protecting our planet.
Okay. So having enough money is much better than having a lot of money. I believe it's more true for those who are born into fortune than for those who earned a lot of money over their lifetime. It seems to be the earning and striving that gives a person appreciation for their wealth, rather than just having it handed to them from their parents or other relatives. Of course, Forrest was not born into money. He worked hard to earn it, and so appreciates it and what it can provide. At the same time, he has dealt with the wealthy and famous, and can see where that lifestyle can lead. He knows that hard work builds character and allows a person to interact easily with people from all walks of life. It is a much broader experience and allows for a richer, fuller understanding of why we exist. When Forrest says only an experience can teach thoroughly and with a speed that is not always available in the classroom, I believe he is telling searchers to get out in the field to really learn the lessons needed to find the treasure. Cheating and intruding on other people is frowned upon, and also be sure to take care of the environment when you're out there searching for gold, because the forests, lakes, and streams are more valuable than any bits of metal tucked inside a bronze chest. Good reminders indeed. Also remember that anguish wrought by misdeeds made in later life comes in larger doses, and we can wonder together if Forrest is referring to himself or someone he knows in this passage.
Page 146, paragraph 2. His name was William Marvin Fenn. He molded so many lives and made such a huge and far-reaching impact on the local society that I was sure everyone would remember him forever. Yet, when I looked him up on Google, I discovered that he's buried alongside my mother in row 4 of block 23 at the Hillcrest Cemetery. And that's about it. Maybe history doesn't want us to remember everything that we've learned, and that's why the grass grows so tall over a French soldier's headstone in Vietnam.
This portion of the story about Marvin... Wait.
Oops.
Where did you read? Where were you reading?
Oh, I read from there. Did I skip something? Oh, you know what?
You did. Yeah.
This is the curse of the double-sided print.
I told you it was double-sided.
Okay.
We're on page 145.
Page 145, paragraph 2. Okay.
Let's try that again.
You should have heard me cussing at Hewlett-Packard this morning because I thought they had made a mistake. It's not Hewlett-Packard. Sorry. So we're going to go back to that paragraph in just a minute. We're going to read the correct paragraph now. Page 145, paragraph 2. My father was a dedicated educator, and he went about his day as adroitly as any of the best in his time. At age 83, he took his own life in order to defeat a cancer that had chewed on his pancreas for too long. He was not going to let it beat him. I admired him for making such a sensible and brave decision. His funeral was held at the large First Baptist Church in Temple, Texas, and he had it all planned: who the pastor would be, who would sing which songs, what kind of flowers he wanted, and who should sit where. The sanctuary was filled with maybe 100 friends. The sanctuary was filled, and maybe 100 friends were standing outside, hoping to hear the words that were being spoken with such passion and eloquence. The preacher said that it was probably the largest crowd he had ever seen at a funeral. It was a testimonial to who my father was and how his life affected nearly all humans with whom he had mingled. I can't remember how many times when walking down the street with my father, a man would come up and say, "You're Mr. Fenn, aren't you? You gave me a few spankings when I was in junior high." My father would always ask, "Well, did you deserve the spankings?" The man would grin. "Well, yes." "Then I'm glad I gave you the lickings because you look like a fine man now." That's what my father always said. He had it down. Most likely the other guy would mumble something like, "I just wanted to shake your hand." And they both would smile as life continued. Hi, greetings, Sheriff, from our Facebook folks. We're smack dab in the middle of our happy hour break. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Excuse me.
This portion of the story about Marvin Fenn's funeral feels like a metaphor for the death of personal responsibility. When the men approached Mr. Fenn on the street and asked if they deserved the spankings they received from him, they replied yes. They took responsibility for their behavior and admitted they had been wrong, and Mr. Fenn conceded that they looked like fine men now. Whether or not the corporal punishment was appropriate, it was the authority of the man who corrected their behavior that they recalled and grew up to emulate. As searchers, it is important that we learn this lesson as well and take personal responsibility for our behavior in how we treat other people in our families and communities, and how we respect the environment while we search for this treasure. We cannot let that ownership of our words and actions die with the last generation.
Just making sure I'm in the right place. Page 146, paragraph 2. Oh, this sounds familiar. His name was William Marvin Fenn. He molded so many lives and made such a huge and far-reaching impact on the local society that I was sure everyone would remember him forever. Yet, when I looked him up on Google, I discovered that he's buried alongside my mother in row 4 of block 23 at the Hillcrest Cemetery. And that's about it. Maybe history doesn't want us to remember everything we've learned, and that's why the grass grows so tall over a French soldier's headstone in Vietnam.
Forrest brings the story back around to yet another graveyard. It seems the specter of death crowds his mind while writing the epilogue. Those who do not remember the lessons of history are doomed to repeat it. What lesson is Forrest pointing to here that he wants us to remember?
Page 147, paragraph 1. Now I feel that my father is sitting on the edge of a cloud somewhere watching. If he knows everything about me, he's pretty busy lighting candles, some of them on both ends. But I hope he knows that I've been sometimes guilty only by innuendo, and that's why I wrote my epitaph with such profundity. Quote, "I wish I could have lived to do the things I was attributed to." Unquote. No time spent in thought is wasted, and nothing is too small to know. So one should not let knowing a little bit be a substitute for learning more. The aspirations of youth grow weak where they languish on the shelves of patience, and some of the things I've enjoyed the most in my life have come from the smallest voices. That butterfly is really a flutterby is one example.
One should not let knowing a little bit be a substitute for learning more. May be a good response for those who say to us, no special knowledge is needed to find the treasure. When Forrest says some of the things he's enjoyed the most have come from the smallest voices, I believe he is referring to a child calling a butterfly a flutterby, and that draws a picture for us of how to decipher things such as the home of Brown and no place for the meek. What would a child find in the woods that she would name the blaze?
Page 147, paragraph 3. In writing this memoir, I've rediscovered things about myself I thought were long forgotten. It would be nice to start life over and do it all again. I'd changed so much, but only for the sake of new adventures. And that's why I think youth should always be wasted on the young. But what do I know? The past will always be contradictory when told by one person at a time. I feel my life has been a rough draft of the place just ahead, where the past will come alive again, and all of my experiences and friends through the years will meet me with a great banquet table of history. Then there will be no past. So before you read this sounds far more spiritual, both these last two paragraphs, than I ever thought Fenn was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, spiritual in the sense of an afterlife and interesting.
Mm-hmm. Here we begin to get into the metaphysical realm of crossing over into death. The times when I have dreamt of my grandmother, grandfather, and uncle who will have passed, we were eating together at a banquet table, family reunion style. In the quantum field, it is said that time is not linear nor limited. All time and all events are accessible in any instant. When we die, perhaps it is as Forrest has described here, and we will relive our history again, and we can make different choices and have new adventures. Or perhaps he is suggesting that this treasure hunt has spawned thousands of adventures for the thousands of searchers, that as they quest, they may learn the lessons that Forrest has tried to teach us through the thrill of the chase.
Questions to ponder. Now that we've read the book together, have any ideas caught up in your mind that provide information to help us decipher the clues in the poem? What aberrations around the edge did you notice throughout the book? Which chapters seem to offer up the most help for searchers? So you mentioned earlier, as we were preparing for the show today, that you had a sense that almost two different people wrote this book. And I wasn't quite sure what you meant. What did you mean when you said that?
Well, I think it's two different sides of Forrest Fenn. When he's writing for, say, a scrapbook or something that's going to appear in a Western newspaper or magazine, he gives it that certain sort of Texan homey flair that's, that indicates his roots, where he's from. In this book, I've found that there are certain places, especially the very beginning and the very end, where he waxes eloquent, becomes more of a poet, and is definitely has that author style. So he puts on an author hat when he's writing those particular chapters. And it makes me wonder, in that case, is that where we should be looking for those pieces of information, those actionable intelligence, or that stuff that's going to help us figure out the poem? Are those the places we need to be focusing? Because the rest of the book was put together from scrapbooks and stories he had already written, or stories he told many, many times, and then just put them in the book to fill it up.
So of those two categories, say the category that was written by someone who waxes eloquent, and the category who was written by a cowboy poet, effectively, which category does the epilogue fall into?
The author.
And which other categories in the context of what we've done already, do you feel like we're written the same way?
At the very beginning, where he's talking about himself, the things where he's in the present moment, in those present moment times. So in the very beginning, he's talking about why he wrote the book, how he decided that he could do it, and he didn't have to have somebody else do it for him. And then in the last, since Golden Moor, on through to the end, then it's become the author again. He's putting on that present moment hat.
So let's take that theory just a little bit further and say, let's suppose you're right, theoretically, you're hypothetically correct in saying that, say, the front of the book and the back of the book were written by the author, and that in between there was a collection of stories that he had written. Are you familiar with the chess term en passant?
Not really.
It's a chess term that has to do with the movement of pawns, but it indicates that you weren't thinking about your move and you deserve to lose your pawn, right? And so it's always an indicator, colloquially, it's an indication that you just weren't thinking about this. You just had to put it together quickly. You know, you had to respond because the clock,
Right.
the chess clock was. So it sounds to me like what you're implying is that the author, the wax eloquent author, was more committed to the project.
I believe that he was putting it out there for posterity at that point. The others were just stories he told, just to pass the time, to be a storyteller. So you have the storyteller and you have the author, right? Two different things.
So it has always struck me as interesting that the chapters that I would think were written by the, quote, cowboy poet tended to be in the middle and tended to be in a prior period, right?
Right.
Like he wrote these in the 1990s when he was sitting down one day at Pink Adobe and debating over, asking Michael McGarrity or Douglas Preston to help him write his autobiography. And their response to that was, just sit down and start writing. You're a great storyteller. And so he did. But from that period not from 1990 to 2010, maybe 2009, he had evolved as an individual, as a writer, because in between he did all those books. There was, the several books that occurred almost 3 years apart, except for that batch that came out in 2004. So he had refined his writing style. So is there a chance that the author could have written the chapters at the beginning of the book and the end of the book in 2009, 2010, while the middle was written at an earlier time, back to and including the 1990s?
Well, definitely the epilogue was written in, I believe he even says.
Yeah, he was 79. He starts it by saying he
79,
was 79.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we know that when he wrote that.
So the distinction between the cowboy poet and the author, the refined, eloquent author, you think is just a matter of time?
Time and what he had been studying and reading to prepare himself to do the writing. So, of course, he was reading the classics, and he was seeing what sort of style he might want to write in. And I believe he was reading a lot of poetry, and because he can quote poetry, he knows it. So he studied it. So yeah, in between he studied those authors and those different styles of writing, and so he came up with a style of writing on his own. He became an author. He was a storyteller. He became an author.
So what do you think all of that means in the context of how we interpret A, Fenn, B, the poem, and C, what's in the book? I'm going to ask you the question you always ask me. How does that get us closer to finding the treasure?
Well, like I said, I believe the middle of the book, it's good. I mean, it's his life. He may have even worked on and re-edited some of it, but and added a little bit of there are certain places in My War for Me where the writing style sort of changes, right? I think he took an earlier story and he edited it, or he added a little bit to it as the author, adding to the storyteller. He wanted a little bit of poetic language in there. So he edited his stories a little bit, but not much. But the beginning and the end, where the author is writing in present moment, he already knows he's either hidden the treasure or he's about to. And he knows he's got that very much at the forefront of his mind, along with the idea that this is his last big hurrah, right? This is his big deal that he's doing. So he had that very much in mind as he's writing the beginning and the very end of the book. The rest of the book, he doesn't. He was just telling stories about his life.
Well, that's certainly a interesting take on all that. I'm glad we did this. I'm glad you did this. It was very well done.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Now go get the treasure.
Now go get the treasure. Okay, you want to scroll back in your chat, and we'll take a look at the chat. I'm going to go back to full screen. And you can say hi to folks.
All right.
And see if we've got any questions.
Chit-chat.
Remember, guys, you see how quickly this chat is scrolling by and how hard it is for us to pick up on any questions that you may have. So if you want to make sure that we see your question, please text it to 1-800-947-1043. The number is on the screen right there. So it's just easier for us to pick up on them. We'll take them in the order in which they arrive.
Well, we had people in the Facebook room watching. I'm going to say hello to them very quickly.
Go ahead.
Because I don't know that they're there anymore. But Victoria Brunini, Cher Royal Strickland, Jamie Snow, Amy Bivens Smith. They were all in the Facebook room. So thanks for joining us there. And let's say hello to our friends in the YouTube
Chat room.
YouTubeverse. Universe. The Tuberverse.
Tuberverse. Yeah, welcome to the Tuberverse.
So we have Cindy Guest from Indiana. K Pro is here from North Carolina. Eric Schmidt. Sam Leno. Nikolai Astrov. Sam Leno is from the UK, remember? Sean Martinez is here from Clovis. Dave Erickson, hello. Rick Plank from Cincinnati. Hot Rod Mav, hello from North Dakota. William Ortiz. Toby, you should play Gypsy Kings on the Gypsy's Kiss, says Eric.
Eric, unfortunately, we have to use what's called royalty-free. Well, not necessarily. We have to use royalty-free music, but we have to use copyright-free music. Otherwise, they can demonetize the video. So we would love to do that because the Gypsy Kings are one of my favorite groups. I see them every time they come to Albuquerque or any place else that I've lived. So I once saw them at Wolf Trap Farm Park in Northern Virginia, and it was one of the best experiences I ever had in a location like that.
And Brent from Austin, Texas is here. Jackie Naden is also from the UK. She's here. Minotaur Moreno says, what are your thoughts on the Forrest Fenn's personal topo map collection with 2 wooden map cases, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, up for auction on eBay right now?
I hadn't seen the Minotaur, so I have no thoughts on them. I'll go check it out after this and maybe address it in tomorrow night's show.
There you go. Aaron and Linda George, hello. It's a new name. Slednick's here. Have you guys heard about the TV pilot? Yes, we read the little article in Deadline.
And you can see a blog post. We actually have a reference to the article on our blog at gypsyskiss.com. And we also have a reference to the new article that was written in American Art and Architecture about Fenn, which, of course, incorrectly states that it's the House of Brown.
Instead of Homa Brown.
Yeah, you'd think they'd get those things
right.
Yeah,
because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gary Sandberg's here from Seattle. And Jimmy Faston is here.
Oh, K-Pro's in the room.
Yeah, and Zoso, it used to be that that Deep Purple A Gypsy's Kiss would come up every time you looked on YouTube for A Gypsy's Kiss until we dominated. And
No, we just started producing more content. What's the question?
he just mentioned that it was that we could play that instead of the Gypsy Kings or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately, the name A Gypsy's Kiss comes from a blog that I used to write when I was out
No,
east.
you have to tell that story tomorrow night because I promised it would be tomorrow night.
Oh, okay.
You
All
have to
right.
tell the whole story
All
about
right.
A Gypsy's Kiss.
Okay.
Somebody said they were going to send you the question
All right.
because they'd sent it last night, but I knew we didn't have time for the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story of how we ended up with the name of Gypsy's Kiss on the Friday night show, where we have more time to discuss those things.
K-Pro had her work canceled because of storms.
Oh,
Jay Stepp is here.
Oh,
Steve
that's,
Smitherman.
Hurricane Michael going north and east through her territory again. They were worried that because of the saturation, it was just going to cause even more damage.
Goldilocks. Paul Ammons. Paul. Diana Grieve.
That sounds like a new name, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That also sounds like a comic book heroine character.
And she mentions it's a drama series, is on Fox. Well, Fox has actually done a, what they call it, a put pilot, which means they bid on it.
Right.
So other people could still bid on it, I guess.
Yeah, the way that all works in that industry, that's an industry that we're familiar with, and the way it all works is somebody puts out a prospectus, a pitch, and people start bidding on it as a put, and basically it gives them the right to at least test it out with a pilot, and they'll start by actually pricing it out, and if it gets too expensive, then they put it back out on the market. But basically it says that Fox has effectively the first right of refusal.
And, you know, Netflix could come along and decide that they want it. And, by the way, Netflix just bought one of our local studios, the Albuquerque studios. They just bought it. They're going to let everybody who's in there on lease finish out their leases, and then they're taking it over. And so Netflix will be doing a lot more production in New Mexico coming up in the future. They're already doing 3 or 4 series here right now. They finished out Longmire, which was a Netflix, which they actually took over from A&E because A&E had only done 1 or 2 seasons, and then they dropped it. And then Netflix took it over. So maybe if it goes well, maybe it'll end up here, being shot here.
So I have a...
Of course, I don't know if we look like Montana, but Longmire was set in Wyoming, and it was shot here.
And it was shot here. So is Jamie Snow on Facebook, Gregory Ferguson on YouTube? Because it looks like they have exactly the same avatar. Or then they're both from Moab, Utah. Interesting.
Huh.
Jamie and
Gregory.
Gregory, are you the same guy? Amy Bibbins Smith is in the house, in the Facebook house.
Yeah. Journeyman is here. William Ortiz, I said that already. Let's see. Davio's here. Hey, Davio.
He has typed something in purple. I can't see it.
Oh, it's a link. If it comes up purple, like that, it's a link.
Gregory just said "Yo" from Moab. Jamie Snow just said "Yo" from Moab, and they're
I know Gregory Ferguson on Facebook, and he uses his name there. So.
Oh, that's the person. So Bard's Magic is asking, how did AGK come into manifestation?
Right.
I'll talk about it on tomorrow night show, because
they asked yesterday, and I knew it was going to be too long a story for a panel night. But make sure you tell that story tomorrow night.
Okay.
Joe Lewicki's here.
K-Pro reminds me that his name is Forrest, not Fenn. I'm trying. I am trying. Okay.
You see, in my notes today, I wrote Forrest every time. I just felt like sometimes if it's followed by a word that starts with the letter S, it's easier to say Fenn something rather than Forrest, and then you get too many S's in a row.
Besides,
that's
to me,
I did it that way.
The Forrest Fenn Friday Forrest Dango just doesn't. The Forrest Dango.
Fendango makes.
Or the Forrest Boree
Yeah.
Yeah, there's times where we just have,
Eric Ramsey's here. What if Forrest is a twin? No.
God forbid, one of them is enough.
No, he's just got two personalities, that right. Like Toby mentioned, I think it was a evolution as well.
Oh, from Sam Leno in the UK. Shelley and Toby, any chances of being extremely generous in organizing a silver coin for your cousins across the pond? Well, it would certainly give us an excuse to make a trip across the pond.
I have a passport.
I have.
Who wants to put super chat in so we can afford to fly?
Yeah, that's a great big super chat. Okay, so here's the problem.
This died.
I think this cable has gone bad as well because well, here, try. I don't need this here.
It's just the worst when they just do that.
Try plugging that in.
Okay.
And then you're going to have to get back to it. So.
Oh no.
It just because it was. It
too
just
many,
is.
Too many cords.
It just might be that the iPad. While you're doing that, I've got a question from.
So our iPad with the chat on it just ran out of power.
You can use this if you want. By scrolling down, going backwards. It's the opposite. If you want to do that, you want to take that.
Where were we?
Right about William Ortiz. So while you're doing that, I'm going to read this from Justin. Let's see. So Justin, a.k.a. Minotaur Moreno from Dallas, Texas. Is there anything to the number 423? It's his father's burial plot and on jacket pocket of James Jameson in the picture in My War for Me around page 92, 96, and standing in front of Candy Ann helicopter smiling. Minotaur, with those kinds of things, again, our solution, and many of you know what our solution is. Our solution is relatively simplistic in terms of interpretation. We looked at the clues in the poem. We have not spent a lot of time attempting to pull things out of, especially numbers, out of the book, and then trying to somehow rationalize them in the context of the poem. So when I get a question like that, I have a very simplistic response, and that is, we have not even considered that. And because we have not even considered it, it's hard for me to respond to it other than, the most I can say is anything is possible. But at the same time, every time I do see a question like that, it doesn't, I'll be very honest, I hope I'm not being offensive, it doesn't inspire me to go look that up, to go chase down that information, because it falls into that category. If we go back to the program that I did a couple of weeks ago about the difference, debating the differences in hints and clues. To me, if somebody handed me a number and said 423, does this have any meaning in terms of an analytical, in terms of an intelligence analysis? I would ask the source, and then I would ask how reliable the source was and how reliable the information was, and it would really rapidly fall down below the ABC 1, 2, 3 categories into progressively lower categories. And as long as I'm doing that, it keeps us focused on the things that are important to us. So when you can see more often than not when somebody asks me one of the questions that is very detailed in the context of their solution, or if it has any meaning like the number 423, I don't have a good answer for you. Not because I don't care about it, but because I can't care about it. I have to focus on what's important to us. So I'm sorry that I can't give you a more rational, useful answer. But those kinds of questions tend to be that way for us. And if I had a reason, if someone could provide me the rationale, what's the reliability of the source, the reliability of the information, and what is your interpretation of whether it's actionable or not? then I would probably take a serious look at it. But if somebody throws a number at me like 423, I can't figure out how it's actionable. So it goes to the back of the classroom, if you will, for analysis one day, assuming that I don't come up with anything else. So.
K-Pro says to Sam Leno, it is happening. So I imagine they must be sending a silver coin over to the UK. I guess we don't have to take it over there ourselves. Gregory says he shared our blog post. Thank you, Gregory.
So this is from R.F. Hecky. The image on page 146, do you think the guy with the axe is Forrest or his dad? I have no opinion on the matter. It's a drawing, and there's not enough detail. I don't ever recall him talking about his father in the context of of lumbering, or he was an outdoorsman, but I don't necessarily think he was a woodsman necessarily. I think it's more likely either Forrest or Donnie, because they're the ones that could relate to that image.
So K-Pro says the silver coin will be in many states, Europe, and even an armchair one. Just you wait, it is getting a life of its own. Well, that's a lot of fun, isn't that?
So I'm going to see if I can get you back.
So maybe the family who's going to be in that drama that's about the chase will be involved in the silver coins as well.
So I'm going to reach across so that you can. Okay. So. Yeah, I don't know.
Everybody seems to be suggesting that Eric Schmidt deserves a free silver coin for keeping his mouth shut for K-Pro. And she's like, is Eric paying people to say that? Because everybody wants me to do that.
Okay, you've got your screen back there.
So I don't know where this is.
You're at the bottom.
So you're going to have to do stuff. Do stuff. Did you get any more texts?
I haven't.
Like you had a bunch of them.
No. They were texts, but they were on my personal text from family. So Davio left us a voicemail, but I can't play that because I don't have the telephone hooked up. I'll play it tomorrow night.
Jeep Girl Jody says they had snow in Denver yesterday. The back roads in the high country are going to be closed soon. Is summer over? Well, yeah, it's fall now.
Gregory says he changed his Facebook name, so Jamie Snow and Gregory. My Facebook kept getting deleted. Okay, that's TMI, brother. I don't want to hear the story. Sonora, Texas. That's a pretty country, isn't that? From, what a pretty name. Delise Yeager.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter. The German word for hunter.
Thomas Aragon is in the room. And he says it is easier to say Fenn than Forrest.
It is, isn't it, Thomas?
1061 Shot says, what are you guys going to do when the treasure is found? Well, you should watch our shows from Tuesday and Wednesday.
So if the treasure... Yeah, we talked about that subject exactly and expressed a lot of our own opinions on the matter in both the Tuesday show and the Wednesday night show. So,
Tursit from Washington State. That's a new name.
What is it? Tursit?
Mm-hmm. Tursit.
Oh, that is? That looks like, no, that's just another Jamie Snow. That's his, no, I'm just...
They all look alike.
So,
and they're only this big. They all look alike.
Jose Wishard is saying hello from Facebook. Hello,
oh, and
Jose.
I have news.
What's that?
Our podcast has arrived on iTunes, so you can find it there.
Great. So remember the podcast show that we did yesterday. If you want, you can go back and see that, where we talked about us establishing a podcast relationship with Anchor.fm, and they take the responsibility for distributing it to all the other podcast platforms. The only one that we were concerned about missing was iTunes, but apparently the iTunes guys have a much more stringent approval process. But Shelley says, as of this morning?
Last night. Kevin found it last night.
Oh, good.
Jason Northface, do I have to re-ask the question I texted you yesterday, or will you get to that today? Did you get a text from Jason Northface yesterday? And do you want to get to it today?
If it doesn't, Jason, if it doesn't relate to the book, hang on. Let's see. So, Jason, if it doesn't relate to the book, if it doesn't relate to this chapter, I'll probably save it for tomorrow night's show, where I read all the text messages that I get through during the week that don't apply to the topic. So, let me see. So this is from Sean Martinez. He says, Fenn's emotional stories gain more weight over time than his general stories, in my opinion, and should be considered primary over his general stories, which are secondary when applying them to solutions. I think we agree with you on that, Sean, giving us yet more reasons to get together and do this. Let's see.
Oh, he said he didn't have his name on it, but did you have him in your phone as his name?
I didn't. So ask him what his area code is.
Jason, what's your area code? Jason North Base. What?
So I can see if I've got it.
Area code.
Because I can look for it by area code.
Oh, it's getting cold in Colorado, man.
Yeah,
it's pretty early in the year for it, but...
Well, they had that storm that came through. It wasn't really a storm as much as it was just wet. That came off the southwestern Pacific over California, Arizona. The clouds that we've had the past couple of days were actually the same storm, but it passed directly over Colorado and dumped a bunch of moisture on it. That's why they're getting the early thing, but it was actually the result of a hurricane that was an unusual hurricane, by the way, that was in the... southwestern Pacific, southwestern California Pacific area, and then it moved in a northeast direction over Southern California, Arizona. We got a little bit of it in New Mexico.
We're not the Weather Channel, are we?
No, we're not.
He says it's 319.
319.
And Dan Gelati says, Toby, can you cover briefly what to do if you find the treasure in a state or federal park?
So let me answer
Jason's
question. I have it, and we'll address it tomorrow night because it's not on today's topic. Although this one isn't either. What was the question?
Oh, Dan Gelati. What to do if you find the treasure in a state or federal park?
Dan, we have answered that question several times in previous videos. We do not expect that it is hidden in a... When you say federal, I'm assuming you mean national. We do not believe that it is hidden in a national park. We do not further believe it is hidden in a state park. And the reason is the laws are so stringent when it comes to those kinds of parks. We do not believe that Fenn would put us through that in terms of him granting title to the gold.
Yeah. Because, if you got caught doing something just to retrieve the treasure, beyond digging a giant hole, you could kind of say, well, Fenn told me it was there, and then it was, and that's where it was. I had to take, he said it was mine. I had to take him at his word when he said, what if there are no questions?
There are no questions. Janet Landgard from Facebook. Hi, Janet. Nice to see you.
How would you feel if Forrest... This is Goldilocks. How would you feel if Forrest ended the chase sooner rather than later so he could see the end result?
I can't imagine he'd do that. I don't think that's a I don't think that's a credible theory. I can't imagine that he'd do that for any reason.
If he did, I'll go ahead and answer your hypothetical. If he did, I'd be happy because, yay, we get, it gets found sooner, and we get to see it in our lifetime and know where it was. So that's all right too.
I think considering the resulting group psychology, it would just be a really bad experience. Minotaur Moreno says, do you guys think the final spot of the treasure has anything to do with his father? We've talked about that in a previous video. We think our opinion in the matter is that it has either to do with his father or it has to do with Eric Sloan. We think one or the other of those individuals have seen the special place. Whether or not it was, we don't think it has anything to do with his father, or we don't think it has anything to do with Eric Sloan. We think that he shared his special place with one or both of them. So that's the extent to which it has anything to do with either one of them.
Dan Gelati says, what is the attorney's name that handles these issues? And Eric Schmidt says, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
Dewey, Cheatham. There is an attorney in, there's a specialist treasure attorney in New York City, and he's retired now, but he covers treasure issues. And a year or so ago, you can look up several white papers on the subject of the legalities of treasure. I wish I could remember his name, of treasure hunting, including offshore in the sea and on the land. And he's considered the expert in these matters when it comes to the legalities of ownership regarding found treasure. And about a year ago, I contacted him and asked him if he wanted to be on the show as a guest. And I got back a very harshly worded response, not against me, but his response was effectively, it's a big hoax and he's pulling the wool over your eyes. And then he cited several examples that had to do with the gold coins, et cetera, et cetera. He went off on the context or on the Fenn treasure and refused to appear on our program to discuss it further. So we let it go. I had stored, like I said, there are 3 or 4 PDF files that he's published. You can find them on academics, I think, or academia.com. And you can go through them, and they're very detailed. He doesn't specifically mention the Fenn treasure in any of them, but he talks about finding treasure on land, finding treasure in the sea, and a lot of the opinions that we have come to were as a result of reading his papers, because he's very clear about treasure found on, say, national park land, and he describes the difficulty that you would have in maintaining the title to that, and what you would have to do. It would cost you a fortune to keep the title to anything that you found in national parkland. So if I can dig up that material from last year, I'll share it with you tomorrow night. But again, it's been so long, I don't even know if I have it anymore.
Jason says, what if the proxy leads you to another state outside the Fenn zone? Would you pursue it? Again, off topic.
Yeah, that's too hypothetical. I try to stick with Jason when it comes to Fenn describing how he hid this treasure, why he hid this treasure, his expectations. When we get off into that area of potential proxy, it's way out of the box of intelligence. Like I have a treasure, it's someplace in the Rocky Mountains, it looks like this, and he said if I follow the poem I can find it. He didn't say if I follow the poem and I find the treasure, it has a proxy device in it that will cause you to travel to a bank in a northwestern state, et cetera, et cetera. So it falls off, again, if we just apply the rules that we talked about last week. That kind of information falls off the intelligence analysis table real quickly. It just doesn't work. You've got to have certain beliefs. If you believe, on the other hand, that Fenn put a proxy item in the treasure chest instead of placing what he said he did, that there's no gold there, that there's a key to a safe deposit box in Poughkeepsie or Toledo, then you're going to frame your solution around that. That's to us. That's not what he said. That falls off the intelligence table. You don't have a source for it. There's no reliable source, and it's not reliable information. So at that point, it slides off the end of the table for us.
So I just want to say hello to Jose
Feliciano
Guichard.
Guichard. Or if it's Spanish, it's Guichard.
Oh, that's what I said. And Janet Landgard in our Facebook room. K-Pro says she missed it, and what did you think about the maps that were for sale?
My answer was I wasn't aware that there were maps for sale on eBay, so I don't have an opinion on the matter until I actually see them.
And we are at the bottom, so.
We're at the bottom. We've dug ourselves down to the bottom of the hole. Okay.
Sean Martinez is ready for a crowd solve party.
Sean, watch next Wednesday's program where we make another announcement about implementation of internet technologies. And I think you will find it damned interesting in the context of what you and I have talked about before, which is the potential for crowd solving. What did he call it last week? He had a great description of.
I don't know.
No. It was really kind of neat. It wasn't disassembling the poem. We had to. Do you remember? It was Sean Martinez who described it.
Oh, that's too bad. I'm busy with reading the chat while you guys are talking.
Sorry.
I can't do both.
I think you'll find our next week's announcement very interesting in the context of what you've suggested more than once, which is applying crowd-solving tools, techniques, and tactics to this problem.
Jason, no, my grandpa was not a baseball player, and my maiden name was Dalton. So if you're thinking Carney, I don't think my husband's grandfather was a baseball player either. But I think he does have somebody in his one of his distant relatives is a professional football player. So or he was. I don't know if he still is. But it's a distant relative. It's not anybody he actually had ever met.
Oh, gosh.
Link me the show that covers finding the treasures. Oh, he wants to know which video we made about what we're going to do. Okay, if we find the treasure, we made a video about that like a year ago. But if it's somebody else finds the treasure, but not us, that was Tuesday. So that's easy to find. Go back one or two videos and it's there.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm trying to switch over here, but I'm just having a terrible time with it. Okay, so here. So the view is the
view?
Read mode, and it just doesn't want to do it correctly. Hold on. I'm trying to get you back to your slides. Give me a sec. Keep talking.
Oh, talking about, well, Goldilocks is worried about wolves.
Wolves?
And I think she's mixing herself up with Red Riding Hood.
Because Goldilocks was a bear thing, right?
Yes, Zozo Rocks, that's right. John Carney, the kicker. You're right. She said that when you're crowd solving, what if somebody goes lone wolf and runs off to go find it without you?
I suppose that's always possible, but that that is true if all you're doing is sharing it with your first cousin or your neighbor. So I don't know. I think it has to be at the mindset, and that is, do we want this treasure found? The question I guess you have to ask if you're getting into the crowd solving mode is, do we want this treasure found? Period. And we don't care by who. Because based on some of our conversations with other treasure hunters, they're just ready to have it found. And if it isn't them, they are okay with that. And there are physical constraints. So if your crowd-solving session consists of people, all of whom are from the Northwest and Southeast, everybody's got an equal chance if you suddenly come to the conclusion. And I think one of the things that you try to avoid is coming to a very specific answer. What you deal with is, say, decoding some of the lines in the poem or interpreting some of the intelligence that resides in the book. So there's ways to approach it from a crowd-solving perspective that may or may not result in a very precise conclusion as to where the chest is laying. So I think that's going to be really hard whether you do it as a group of crowd solvers or not.
Shane wants to know, what's your opinion on why so many presidents were referenced by Fenn, all in capital letters, Fenn, as opposed to Forrest, I guess, directly and indirectly in the book?
Well, because I can't make that judgment because I don't feel the same way about the number of presidents. But presidents are convenient because There's lots of documentation on what they said and what they did, so it makes it easy to cite and use. It's good intelligence in the sense that it was from, you can validate or verify the source and the source's reliability, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think, and it's easy to find material in which presidents have spoken on a certain topic. So I don't necessarily have any sense that it was meaningful in the grand scheme of finding the treasure. I just think it's a convenient device that all of us use. It's easy to look up quotes.com, put in something you're looking for, and get a bunch of people back, some of whom are going to be presidents of the United States.
And
so I've got a couple of questions here.
Sean says it was hacking the poem.
Hacking, yeah, I like that. Let's get together online in a collaborative session of cooperating searchers for hacking the poem in order to crowd solve it. That's going to be the title of that. Okay, from Susie. She says, me again, what is your opinion on the double omegas? Do you think it has anything to do with solving the poem? No.
I think it means that a Libra is going to find the treasure.
I think that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it looks like the Libra sign.
This is Rick Plank.
Okay. From Cincinnati.
From Cincinnati. Toby, I only see one podcast on Google Podcasts. Is the Lorene Mills interview? None of the others are available there. Rick, I've got to tell you that we're new to, not that we're new to Anchor, but we're new to the idea that Anchor is doing this for us, doing the distribution. So we're not quite sure. I've got an email. They don't have a support line. They have an email line. And I've got a question into them asking them to explain the process for how they do the distribution, how they establish it, how people can find it, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of options besides Google Plus. We know that they are on pretty much all the other platforms. You're the first one to say that they're not on any particular platform. But I would say for the moment, just try another platform, Stitcher or Podcaster or what were the other ones? There was a couple. Spotify. So there's a number of more reliable ones. Well, I don't want to say more reliable. There's a number of the other applications that you can find it on. And the easiest way to find out which applications we're on is to go to our anchor.fm/A Gypsy's Kiss page. And if you click on the white button in the middle of the page, it'll tell you which platforms on which platforms you can find our podcast.
And it's now on iTunes.
So from Sean Martinez, how do you feel about the consistency of death and final resting places in this last chapter, along with its relation to the poem and how it can be applied to the solution? I'm going to answer the last part of that first. Fenn is really good in every one of his stories, in the poem and in the book and all his memoirs, of implementing the hero's journey. And the hero's journey always ends with the return of the boon and the expectation that there is another hero's journey that begins at that point. But it's the end of that one. And death for the hero is just another beginning. And so I feel like he sees that this alliteration to death and dying, et cetera, is just a form of his recognition. And this is the section, the chapter, if you will, that to me it identifies Fenn as a afterlife level of spiritual person. And so if you're into the hero's journey, death is just a form of beginning and nothing to be afraid of.
It's change. Just like in the tarot, the death card just means change.
Yeah. So that's how I feel about it, and I'm very much in line with that because I'm a hero story kind of person. I believe that we're all living lives that are that can be defined in the context of the hero's journey, and he strikes me as literally very much that kind of person. Okay, you ready for transition?
David Dow, yes, we only have 4 episodes up so far. More are coming over the weekend.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have the Fandango episodes up, so there's like 9 or 10 episodes.
I mean, iTunes takes a little longer. But,
yeah.
The 4 episodes that you're seeing on iTunes, Toby uploaded last Saturday?
Last weekend,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it takes a lot of time for them to process and proliferate to the other platforms. So you can always find them on, you can always find the most current on Anchor.fm /A Gypsy's Kiss. You can download those to the desktop. But again, if you watched our podcast yesterday, the one complaint that we had about Anchor FM.
Did we do a podcast yesterday? We did an announcement video.
I'm sorry. In our announcement video yesterday, Anchor FM, the smartphone version application of Anchor FM allows you to listen to the podcasts, but doesn't allow you to download them, which kills the whole concept of portability. But there are other platforms on which our podcasts now reside that do make that available on your smartphone. The problem is Anchor is responsible for the distribution. We are not. That's why we chose Anchor. We upload our podcast to Anchor, put in the title, tags, and description, and then they handle distribution. And so it's not going to appear on the other platforms at the same rate at which we are uploading them.
Okay.
All right. Here's your transition.
So tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we will be back live again for It's All About You. And Toby will be interviewing me.
Because it's what All About You is about.
So it's all going to be about me tomorrow. For those of you who have any kind of interest in me for whatever reason, you can text in or send Toby a text or a voicemail, and he will ask your questions after he asks all of his questions for that interview tomorrow. And I do hope that you will drop by and hang out in the chat room.
So again, as Shelley said, you can call the 1-800 number, 1-800-947-1043. You can text, You can text any messages, any questions or comments that you have for Shelley, and I will ask them. We'll stay on as long as it takes to get all the questions asked. Since we're both going to be tied up in the actions associated with producing this, it's going to be hard for us to watch the chat room at the same time. So please, again, if you have any questions for Shelley, text them to the 1-800 number. And we're not going to open up the phone lines because it slows down the interview. But if one of you will call the 1-800 number and leave a voicemail in which you sing Happy Birthday to Shelley, I will play that voicemail. How's that? Okay? So call 1-800-947-1043 and sing Happy Birthday to Shelley, and I'll play it on tomorrow's show. How's that?
All right.
That sounds like fun, huh?
You betcha.
You betcha.
Yeah, you betcha.
You betcha.
And
I'm hating
tomorrow evening, Toby's going to be back for his Forrest Fenn Friday Fandango at 7 p.m. Open text and phone lines, and he'll be answering any questions that you've sent over the week that he has not yet gotten to, and any new questions.
I'm going to change that to Forrest Dango. That's all there is to it.
No, because it starts with Forrest.
Yeah, true.
The whole thing starts with Forrest. So it's good.
Okay.
And, we're ready to go. So, thank you all for your kind attention, your questions, and your conversation in the chat room today. We know you have a choice when picking out what to watch on YouTube, and we're glad that you spend some time with us today. For A Gypsy's Kiss, the book club, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. We look forward to seeing you tonight on The Softer Side at 7 p.m.
Yep.